From your local election headquarters, this is a special edition of Newsmakers, a 12 News debate.
Welcome to this debate in Rhode Island's race for U.S. Senate. Hello, everyone. I'm Tim White.
And I'm Ted Nesi. Each candidate will have an opportunity to give a 1-minute closing statement at the end of this debate.
And the candidates are, from left to right on your screen, Sheldon Whitehouse. Mr. Whitehouse is the current Democratic U.S. Senator from Rhode Island. He was first elected in 2006. Prior to that, he served as Rhode Island Attorney General and U.S. Attorney. And Patricia Morgan. Ms. Morgan is a Republican state representative from West Warwick, first elected in 2011 and again in 2020. A financial advisor, Ms. Morgan was previously a special education teacher. Candidates, as you know, there is no strict format to this debate. We're looking for an open and honest discussion of the issues, and we encourage both of you to engage with each other. But if you're not answering the question or taking too long, we will jump in. Let's begin. We want to start with the Washington Bridge crisis, and candidates, in full transparency, we had planned a question based on Ms. Morgan's criticisms of Mr. Whitehouse for not obtaining the full amount of federal money state leaders requested to replace the westbound Washington Bridge. Then 2 days ago, the delegation announced another round of funding, bringing the total to $220 million. That's the amount state officials initially sought. Ms. Morgan, does this development mean your opponent and his colleagues in the delegation have delivered? And if so, was your criticism premature?
I don't think it was. I think an election really sharpens politicians' attention to their constituents, and I think that's what happened here. Once the criticism came out, we had a video. I think they got busy. We've known for a long time that there were problems with the DOT here in Rhode Island with what was happening with our roads. They've been spending $4.2 billion, and yet they neglected the most important bridge in our state, and it is affecting our economy. We knew that there were problems with the different contractors. We knew that contracts had been extended just by fiat. And we knew that there were problems. We haven't had oversight, and that's something that the federal government needs to start doing. We need an inspector general. When we give billions of dollars, the taxpayers in Rhode Island deserve to get $1 billion worth of value, and they haven't been.
All right, Mr. Whitehouse, you heard your opponent there. She says it's an election year, and that spurred you and your colleagues to make sure the funding got here just a couple of days ago. How do you respond?
Well, this additional $95.5 million came actually through a grant program that I wrote years ago. It has funded the viaduct going by Providence. It has funded the 146 improvements. It has funded the renovation beginning at the Newport Bridge. And it now has added nearly $100 million to the Washington Bridge. Brings the total to $220 million in federal grants that's not a bad number when you consider that we don't even have contracts yet. We're probably close to halfway there if current projections are good. So to have, for the state, $220 million in their pocket, ready to go as this process moves forward, I think shows a congressional delegation that is doing its job quite well. And I'm particularly proud of the infra bill, which now has about $400 million worth of work either underway or in queue here in Rhode Island. That's, to me, a big deal.
Mr. Whitehouse, I want to stick with you here, and we can close out this topic before we move on. As you point out, there is no contract yet. The delegation, despite that, has secured nearly $250 million in federal funding. There has been a lot of criticism of how Rhode has handled the crisis. Based on all of that and the amount of federal dollars, do you think Peter Alviti should remain in place at the DOT?
I'm not going to be a critiquer of the state. My job in my role is to make sure that the state has the funding that it needs. And when the Washington Bridge went out of service, that became a real emergency, and that is why the entire delegation swung into action to make sure
with all that federal funding, you want to be hands off?
There's plenty of oversight through actually the federal DOT that administers the funding, and I'll let the General Assembly and the governor sort out the rest of it. I have plenty of other things to do.
Ms. Morgan.
And by the way, I should have done this at the very beginning. I just wanted to thank you guys for this opportunity, thank the station, and thank my opponent for participating.
Ms. Morgan, you're a state rep. Should Peter Alviti stay or go?
He should be fired. He should have been fired in 2015, as far as I'm concerned. He has run DOT very poorly. It is just eating up money and giving us very little value. You know, when Maryland's bridge was taken out of commission, right, when the barge made it crumble, that delegation had full funding within hours. It is 10 months later, and we have maybe half. The bridge still hasn't been taken down, and now they're saying it's going to come down maybe by the end of 2025. The damage to our economy is enormous, and there hasn't been oversight. We knew that the contractors were dumping contaminated soil. We have known for a long time, and I honestly, ever since the tolls, we tried to push the tolls through over on our economy, I have really watched DOT, and I have done studies, and I have made them public. So we have known that there are a lot of problems with the way DOT is being run by Alviti. He should not be there, and yes, we should have much more oversight.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Ted?
Candidates, the senator elected next month will serve through the year 2030. Just 3 years after that, Social Security's trust fund is projected to run out of money, which means people would no longer be paid their full benefits. Mr. Whitehouse, I'll start with you. You've proposed a bill that would increase taxes significantly on Americans making over $400,000 to fund Social Security. Experts say this would generate trillions of dollars, but it would also give the U.S. some of the highest top tax rates at the high end in the world. Do you have any concern about how, say, a 42% top rate on capital gains might harm the economy?
No, I think that the important thing here, first and foremost, is to make sure that Social Security and Medicare are sound. And my bill has been looked at by both actuaries, and it is said that my bill would make them sound literally as far as the actuarial eye can see. Now, to the tax side, what we see is huge holes in the tax system that years of special interest pressure have created. So I am confident that we'll be able to find ways to raise the necessary revenue to accomplish that vital purpose in ways that meet the important standard of fairness. Our tax code right now is not fair. It is not fair when billionaires pay lower tax rates than school teachers. It is not fair when companies get rewarded by the tax code for moving offshore and moving jobs offshore. So there is plenty of room to maneuver within the tax code in order to perform an essential service like that. And I'll close by saying that's just not for seniors. Right now, there are young families in Rhode Island who are wondering, will Social Security and Medicare be there for me as they plan their financial futures? And I would like to scrub that worry right off their list, and we can do that. And given Democratic majorities, we will do that.
Ms. Morgan, you hear Mr. Whitehouse's proposal for shoring up Social Security. Would you support any tax increases on Americans over $400,000 directed to that program?
You know, there's not enough money over $400,000. People, I mean, it's just not going to happen the way he thinks it is. But it will hurt our economy. It will hurt job creation. I'm a financial advisor. I know that Social Security and Medicare are vital to every retiree. They're just vital. And so I will do everything I can to strengthen Social Security and Medicare. I think the way is to prioritize it. In the last session, my opponent has been a deciding vote to take $1.2 trillion and use it on climate subsidies. That doesn't help seniors, right? It actually adds to their burden. He has okayed the spending of about $500 billion on college loans, transferring them onto the back of taxpayers. The open border, that's been hundreds of billions of dollars. That money, if we had it, should have gone into Social Security to shore it up, to make sure that that trust fund was healthy and had the money to continue. We can't keep spending money on stupid stuff. We have to start making priorities and making sure our priorities are funded and well funded. A little known fact is that my opponent took $266 billion out of Medicare to put into EV subsidies. How does that help seniors? How does that help Medicare be stronger? It doesn't. That's the kind of stuff I'll stop.
Mr. Whitehouse, 30 seconds to respond to any of those claims, particularly the idea that the Democratic Congress just has not prioritized funding into Social Security in the last session.
We have been over and over again blocked by the Republican Party in efforts to do this. For as long as Social Security and Medicare have existed, there have been Republicans trying to undermine and reduce benefits to Social Security and Medicare. That is a part of our unfortunate history. And even now, after President Biden generated the standing ovation that everybody would support Social Security and Medicare with no benefit cuts, the Republicans in the House went right back to work proposing more benefit cuts for Social Security and Medicare. So I stand by our Democratic loyalty to Social Security and Medicare, and I think it's very important that we do what is really a double win. We put fairness back into the tax code so that people aren't justifiably angry that working people are paying higher tax rates than billionaires, and we put Social Security and Medicare onto a permanently sound footing. As to the rest of the stuff, I don't know that there's any factual basis to it, and I won't go into that.
15 seconds, and I'm giving it back to Tim. Ms. Morgan.
You know, I think every Republican voted against the Inflation Reduction Act because it didn't reduce inflation. Instead, it will spend $1.2 trillion on climate subsidies. The budgets that he has written and approved have poured money into illegal immigration, have poured money into college loans, and God knows what other really stupid choices. We need to stop that. That money can be better used in Social Security.
Thank you. We're going to do a rapid fire section now so we can get through some topics quickly. I'm looking for one or two word answers here, and we realize you have both weighed in on some of these topics, but voters watching now may not know where you stand. Mr. Whitehouse, we know you've sponsored a bill that would create term limits for Supreme Court justices. For the purposes of this debate, what are the term limits you are proposing?
18 years.
Ms. Morgan, if you are in the Senate, would you vote for or against that bill?
I would vote against it. The Supreme Court is a co-equal branch of government. The other branches are not allowed to impose anything on it.
Okay.
They need to be independent.
This is a rapid fire section. Ms. Morgan, would you support or oppose term limits for U.S. senators then?
I would.
And how long?
I think 2 terms.
Mr. Whitehouse?
I'm running for my 4th term, and I think that every 6 years the voters get a shot at every senator, and I think that 6-year term for the senators make a lot of sense.
Thank you, Mr. Whitehouse. So we'll stick with you. Would you support or oppose legislation that would legalize recreational marijuana for those 21 years of age or older at the federal level?
No.
Ms.
I think
Morgan?
there's more work that needs to be done at the state level. There are health and safety concerns.
Ms. Morgan?
I agree with that.
Okay. And final question here in this section. Ms. Morgan, we'll start with you. The Reproductive Freedom for All Act is a bipartisan bill that would bring back a federal right to abortion as it existed before the Dobbs decision. Would you vote for or against that bill?
I think the Supreme Court got it right. They returned it to the states, and that allowed legislators, the representatives of the people, to actually weigh in.
So you would vote against that bill?
I would.
Okay, Mr. Whitehouse.
I would very happily vote for that bill. This is an important right for Rhode Island women, and it was a terrible act by the right wing of the Supreme Court to take that right away after decades.
Thank you, Mr. Whitehouse. Ted?
Candidates, I want to talk about elections themselves. And Ms. Morgan, I'll start with you on this. You've said that the 2020 election was, quote, not legitimate. And so I have a simple question for you. Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election?
Yes, he did. Obviously, the Biden-Harris administration has been in charge for the last 4 years, destroying our economy.
So you do not agree then with some of the farther out claims that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, at the top of your ticket, are making about that election?
No, he lost.
He lost. Senator Whitehouse,
he definitely lost.
Well, I figured you thought that. You know, a different question for you, but on the topic of the election. You're a fierce critic of Donald Trump, but polls show a near majority of Americans are now poised potentially to send him back to office. So it's entirely possible he will be president again. If that happens, how will you as a senator work effectively with a president you've deemed unfit for office?
Well, I've worked very well with a great number of Republican senators. I have over and over again led bipartisan legislation in the Senate. I was twice in the president's office during that administration, having the president sign my bipartisan bills into law. So I would continue to do what I've always done, which is, irrespective of who is the president, do my very best for the voters here in Rhode Island and be productive, and where I can be productive in a bipartisan fashion.
Mr. Whitehouse, in June, President Biden reinstated some of the Trump-era immigration policies in an effort to reduce the number of unauthorized border crossings. Is that an acknowledgement that the Democratic Party has failed on this issue?
Well, obviously, it continues to be a problem. I would say that there's plenty of blame to go around. In my world, I was part of the bipartisan immigration reform that came through the Senate Judiciary Committee with a strong bipartisan vote, that cleared the Senate with a strong bipartisan vote, and was killed by House Republican leadership. I was closely watching the recent bipartisan measure in the Senate for a very good immigration bill, I believe, that Republicans were lining up behind, until Donald Trump said, I would rather have this as an issue than I would have a solution to this problem. And he told them all to back away from the bill they had negotiated, and obediently they did. Those two partisan tragedies, I think, have a lot of responsibility for where we are. I do think that increased border security is important. Fentanyl machinery, asylum reform, more officers along the border, more adjudication capacity. Those are all things that we ought to be able to agree on.
But doesn't what the president did in June show that he could have done something sooner with the stroke of a pen, even despite the failed legislation?
Looking back, now that we know that Donald Trump caused that legislation to fail, but we didn't know that at the time. I think the president, with a lot of confidence in the legislative process, having served in the Senate for all those years, had a very logical argument to make that he doesn't want to disrupt the existing political balance while he works towards what would be the very best outcome here, which is a strong bipartisan border enforcement bill. So it's hard to go back and say, when he didn't know that was going to fail, that he should have put it at risk with additional administrative measures.
All right, Ms. Morgan, as you heard your opponent there talk about, a bipartisan bill would have dramatically increased the number of agents for U.S. Customs and Border Protection. It was killed after urging by former President Trump. Did your party's loyalty to a presidential candidate come at the sacrifice of a more secure border?
That bill failed because the American people rejected it. It was a bad bill. It codified, it put into law all the bad policies that have allowed 10 to 15 million illegal immigrants to stream into our country. Among those illegal immigrants have been 400,000 convicted criminals, 13,000 murderers, 15,000 rapists, sexual and human traffickers, yes, and people bringing fentanyl across that border in large amounts that have entrapped our kids into addictions. It was a bad bill. A much better bill was the one passed by Congress, which is H.R. 2, that has been sitting in the Senate waiting to be taken up for over a year. That would have actually put in place the real policies that would have stopped that flow of humanity across our border. It would have finished the wall. It would have reinstituted Remain in Mexico policies. It would have worked with Mexico to close their southern border. It would have reinstituted Title 42. It would have made changes to the catch and release policies that have been a magnet to those illegal immigrants. We can't afford it in this country. It is making our cities less safe. Here in Rhode Island, in the last year, we have had 3 illegal immigrants picked up by our police for doing heinous acts against children. They were taken to our courts, and the judge let them go because of their immigration status so that they could reoffend, even though there was a detainer from ICE against those illegal immigrants. No parent wants that unsafe condition in their neighborhoods. So we must close the border. We must pass H.R. 2. and we must stop sanctuary policies.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Ted?
Candidates, the Senate is unusual because most legislation actually requires a supermajority to pass rather than a plain majority due to the filibuster. Vice President Harris, in her campaign, has called for senators to implement a carve-out in the filibuster specifically for abortion legislation, so that could pass with only 51 votes. But Rhode Island Senator Jack Reed has suggested Harris is playing with fire there by potentially tweaking the filibuster rules. So, Mr. Whitehouse, who do you side with on that, Vice President Harris or Senator Reed?
I side with the Sheldon Whitehouse view on this, which is that the problem in the Senate is actually the quorum call. The quorum call allows one member of the minority party to stop action on the Senate floor until the majority party can bring 50 members and produce a quorum. I think we can have the old filibuster rule back, in which the minority party gets to talk itself out for as long as the rules permit. But this business of shutting down the Senate to give the minority party a veto and stop things that are going forward, I don't think makes any sense. So the reform we actually need is to the quorum call, and then you can bring back real filibuster and let the minority party have their say the way they always did. But at the end of the day, when the debate is concluded, somebody stands up and says, Mr. President, with no further debate, I call the vote.
Ms. Morgan,
that's where we should go.
This does divide Republicans as well. Former President Trump has called for the filibuster to be eliminated, but Mitch McConnell and the Republican leadership do not support that. Who do you side with, Trump or McConnell, on that?
We need to keep the filibuster. It gives the minority a voice, and it is part of our democracy. During the National Democrat Convention, Sheldon Whitehouse was in a news gaggle with a media outlet called The Dispatch. And he revealed that if the Democrats have the presidency and both the Senate and the House of Representatives, that they intend to do away with the filibuster. And then they intend to pack the court with toadies so that the Democrats can enact all of their prized legislation. That would be a constitutional crisis. It would be the end of our democracy. That's what he wants. That is not what I want. I want to preserve the democracy. It's worked pretty well for 250 years. I think we can go a little bit longer.
I do recall you making headlines with that interview, Mr. Whitehouse. Do you have any characterization you want to give of what you said there?
I said there basically what I've said here, that allowing a minority to throw the Senate into complete blockade using something as arcane as the quorum call rule is not the way to do business. If people want to actually come to the Senate floor and argue their case, great. I'm all for that. That's the way the filibuster should work. This business of one senator shutting down the entire Senate, putting it into silence, and killing off legislation without even an argument, that's what's wrong, and that's what we should fix.
We have 45 seconds.
But that's what
each.
he wants. He wants to shut down real conversation. He wants to shut down the meeting of minds, which is what democracy is about. Maybe it's messy, but both sides should be represented in every piece of legislation.
All right, we have to move on, and now we have 30 seconds for a response on each of these. Mr. Whitehouse, climate change, you've been a big supporter of offshore wind. Over the summer, a blade on a turbine snapped, and it has littered local beaches with debris. I'm thinking if this was an offshore oil spill off the coast of Rhode Island, you would have spoken out. Is there a double standard here?
The problem that we face with oceans is that they are in terrible trouble. And as a senator representing the ocean state, and as a senator representing a state where sea level is rising and where our coasts are imperiled, it's really important that we get after the real problems in the ocean, which are fossil fuel emissions, which create the heat that raises the sea level and which acidify the oceans. That's number one. Two, wild, unlimited fishing by pirate fishermen. And three, ocean plastics.
All right,
I'm
Ms.
the
Morgan,
lead on all those three issues in the Senate.
30 seconds here, Ms. Morgan. In the past week, you retweeted a social media post that said, quote, "Climate change is a hoax." Is that what you believe?
I'm a pretty common sense and practical problem solver. I see a problem, I try to search out the absolute best solution for it. What really upsets me is that my opponent has chosen the most destructive, most expensive way to produce energy, and it doesn't even reduce carbon over its life cycle. There are much better solutions. We are actually,
10 seconds,
he is proposing that we allow offshore wind, which I get it. It really helps his wife. She makes millions of dollars a year with her climate company. But it is going to destroy our marine environment. It is already hurting marine mammals, and it is...
All right, Ms. Morgan, I have to cut you off because we have to make sure we leave both of you time for closing statements. You each have 1 minute to give a closing statement, the order of which was drawn randomly prior to this debate. Up first is Ms. Morgan, your 60-second closing remarks.
I'm running for the United States Senate because every day Rhode Islanders need a champion in Congress. Over the past 18 years, my opponent and his allies have passed a host of radical and destructive policies that are hurting the citizens of America. But they sure have benefited him and his cronies. Your standard of living has deteriorated. Your financial security has been eroded. And too many Rhode Islanders have seen their American dream crumble. My opponent doesn't care, but I do. Send me to Washington, and I'll stick up for the little guys. I'll work to close the border, bring down the high cost of living, and protect you and your children. I'll work to make your lives better. I'm asking for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Now, Mr. Whitehouse, your 60-second closing remark.
Thank you. Thank you to everybody who tuned in, and thank you to all Rhode Islanders who participate in our political process and vote whatever side you vote for. I'm here to ask for your vote again in November. I would be proud to take that vote and go and continue to do the work in Washington that I have been doing. The Comprehensive Addiction Recovery Act that is guiding Rhode Island's opioid response was my bill. $400 million worth of work is coming into Rhode Island because of infra, which was my bill. Medicare is now able to negotiate with Big Pharma and bring down prices for Rhode Islanders, something I fought for the entire time I've been in the Senate. Yes, we do have more work to do. We need an honest and accountable Supreme Court. We need to get dark money out of our politics. We need to protect Social Security and Medicare. Please give me a chance to go back and do those things. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whitehouse, and thank you both for taking part in this important exchange. A reminder, Election Day is November 5th. Early voting has already begun. We have everything you need to know in our voter guide, including key dates and voter information in Rhode Island and Massachusetts. You can get to it by scanning that QR code or going to WPRI.com/vote. And we have a Cranston mayoral debate next week. We'll see you then on Newsmakers.